We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
I'm going to bring the country together.
Anyway, am I allowed to take any questions?
And he walks off the stage and he's like,
welcome back to Hero Journey, folks. It's officially the lead up to the 2024 presidential election. And like a lot of you, I've been asking, how are these our two options? How is this where we are as a nation? Why do I suddenly feel like Bonnie Tyler? Listen, I can't speak for you. Maybe you're watching this and you're thinking, I'm perfectly content with Biden. I think he's a great president. I think he's the paradigm of good leadership. And also, he looks hot in aviators. Oh, yeah. Maybe you're watching this and you think that Trump is the savior of the republic. That he is going to turn back the tide of socialism and social decay, and he is going to make America great again. Maybe you just try to tune out politics the same way that you tune out your kids in the back seat on a 10-hour drive on the way home from Disney World. Or maybe you're like me. Maybe you are engaged, but you're struggling to stay optimistic. Maybe you understand that this stuff matters, that the conversations that we have about who we are as a nation, about what we stand for, about the way that we want to see each other, the way that we want to treat each other, what vision we want for our kids, that this stuff matters. But it seems like our leaders are either just playing political hot potato, passing the blame and the fault on to the other side, or worse, that we're all playing smear the queer on this societal scale. We're finding the people who are not like us, and then we're just mobbing them. In their 1990 book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette outlined the 4 masculine archetypes as a way to explore what it means to live a healthy and balanced life, and then by extension, what it looks like to be a good and balanced leader. And as I've been following the lead up to the 2024 election, I keep coming back to this framework of the 4 masculine archetypes. Why? Because Trump and Biden, they seem less like serious leaders and they seem more like caricatures of the shadow sides of the archetypes. And if that doesn't make sense, it will in a minute. All of this got me thinking, maybe I can use this as an opportunity to share with you a framework that has been incredibly helpful to me and might just be helpful to you as well. Not just in your understanding of politics and potential presidential candidates, but in the way that you conduct yourself in your life. Side note here for the ladies, these archetypes were written as masculine archetypes, but they apply just as well to women, just in slightly different ways. Here's the plan for today's video. We're going to take each archetype one at a time, and we're going to explore what that archetype looks like in maturity, as well as what it looks like when it's gone wrong. And we're going to use Trump and Biden as examples to illustrate the points as we go. And then at the end, we're going to watch a video that is a demonstration of what the mature form of these archetypes looks like in action. Make sense? All right, let's go. The first archetype is the king, and this is the most obviously applicable to the role of president. Okay, so to help illustrate the point here, I've got a little diagram. So each of these archetypes has a mature form when things are going well and a shadow or immature form when things are not going well. And that's going to be either in an active way or in a passive way. So the king represents authority and order. His role is to create and to maintain order that allows for his people to flourish. Without order, we can have no peace because chaos is the lack of peace. Every society, whether it's a marriage or a family or a community or a nation, needs to have a set of rules to abide by, as well as structures set in place to make sure that those rules are followed. And the more that those rules are fair and just and righteous, and the more that the enforcement of those rules is fair and just and righteous, the more the people flourish. This is the dad who is honorable and kind, whose kids look up to him as a mountain of a man. The good king is also a servant. He understands that the purpose of his authority is to serve his kingdom and to serve the greater good. He is concerned about the kingdom carrying on well after he's gone. So it's not about him. He's a servant. He's not driven by a lust for power, but he's also not afraid to exercise his authority when he needs to. But what happens when a person or a leader is not living into the identity of the good king? Well, in that case, he's going to slip into either the shadow form of the tyrant on the active side or the weakling on the passive side. To illustrate the tyrant, we're going to examine President Trump, and to illustrate the passive shadow form, the weakling, we're going to examine President Biden. Before we dive in, Please take a moment to like this video. That goes a long way to help me with the algorithm and will help get this content out far and wide. All right, let's dive in. The tyrant is domineering. He's driven by a lust for power. He's ruthless. He's insensitive. He uses his position of authority for his own selfish ends.
When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Whatever you want. Grab them by the...
He doesn't care for the needs of others. He's paranoid that people will try to take power from him. And for this reason, he doesn't cultivate his people. He subjects them.
No, Christie's, he's eating right now. He can't be bothered. Sir, please do not call him a fat pig. That's very disrespectful. Don't call him.
He keeps them down out of fear of his own vulnerability. Think about the biblical examples of Pharaoh or King Herod killing the male babies. The tyrant always kills the younger challenger to his throne.
We are leading to sanctimonious by massive numbers. He's heading south quickly. No personality. You got to have a personality to win.
He's jealous and controlling. For the tyrant, there is no greater good. He's not a servant. He only serves himself. Now, here's something to understand. Nobody is going to be perfectly aligned with just one aspect of the archetype. There will be places where Trump is more aligned with the mature or good king. So one of the primary functions of the good king is to set and maintain the boundaries of his kingdom, the boundaries that separate his kingdom from the chaotic world outside of his domain. He also maintains law and order inside of his domain. Both of these issues were focuses for Trump, both in terms of his rhetoric and also in terms of his policy. There will also be places where Trump is more aligned with the weakling, but to get a better idea of what the weakling looks like in action, we turn to Biden. The weakling refuses the throne. He abdicates responsibility. He refuses to take the reins when he needs to. The most obvious examples of this are Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan and his failure to secure the southern border. This refusal to take action is the essential embodiment of the weakling. The weakling lacks authority. He is indecisive. He's ineffective. He relies on others to make his decisions for him.
I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble.
I wish I had a chance to take all your questions, but I'm going to get in real trouble if I do that.
He's too weak to take action when he needs to. So under his rule, the kingdom becomes chaotic and it fragments apart. Whatever you think about Biden and his policies, you would be hard pressed to argue with the reality that under his administration, the country has become increasingly chaotic and fragmented. Again, there are areas where Biden will align more with the mature king. He passed the CHIPS Act, which is a much needed step in the direction of ramping up domestic production of semiconductors, which will decrease our reliance on foreign production of one of the key components of our national defense. He also passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill that will help improve the texture of the kingdom and will tangibly improve the lives of many Americans. I don't want to descend too much into policy argument, so if you want to be a good king in your own life, here are 3 principles for you. Number 1, create and maintain good order in your spheres of influence. This order should be good and fair, and it should allow your people to flourish. Don't hold too rigidly to unrealistic expectations because that makes you a tyrant. Don't let chaos reign. That makes you a weakling. Number 2, take responsibility for the things that you're responsible for, as well as the things that impact you and your people that you may not actually be responsible for. If it impacts you and your people, it's your responsibility to attend to it. And number 3, keep the big picture in mind. Your role is to serve your kingdom and your people. It's not to establish yourself as the Lord Almighty. Whatever authority and responsibility you have, it's meant to be used to help create a better world, to help bring heaven to earth. Support and empower your people. Allow them to outgrow you when the time comes. Do whatever you can to help your people and your kingdom flourish. All right, next we turn to the warrior. In order to be a good king, you also need to be a good warrior. The warrior archetype represents action and courage and discipline. The warrior lives by a code. He's a man of principle. He submits to the law of the land and he fights for what's right and what's just. The warrior is focused and determined, and he faces his challenges head on. The warrior is the part of you that knows that life is an adventure, and when things get tough, just laughs and says, bring it on. The active shadow form of the warrior is the sadist. So the sadist is aggressive and prone to unnecessary conflict.
You are a rude, terrible person.
He's insensitive to the pain of others.
You got to see this guy. I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
He is overly competitive.
Nobody's stronger than me.
Nobody has better toys than I do.
There's nobody bigger or better at the military than I am.
Nobody loves the Bible more than I do.
Nobody builds walls better than me. Nobody's better to people with disabilities than me.
You may agree with his policies and his opinions, but you can't argue that these are true of Trump. He is aggressive and prone to unnecessary conflict. He is insensitive to the pain of others, and he is overly competitive. Moreover, Trump supporters love him because he is a warrior, because he champions the causes that they care for. But the defining characteristics of a mature warrior are self-discipline and living strictly by a code. And I don't think two less apt descriptors could be furnished for Trump. The passive shadow form of the warrior is the masochist. The masochist lacks assertiveness and vitality. This is literally true of Biden.
Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc.
Are you effectively giving Putin permission to make a small incursion into the country?
Good question. That's how it did sound like, didn't it?
The masochist also avoids necessary conflicts. Again, we can point to his lack of intervention at the southern border, his soft handling on crime and economic issues, and many more. Again, you may agree with Biden and his policies, but you would be hard-pressed here to argue that these characteristics don't apply. If you want to be a good warrior in your own life, here are 3 principles for you. Number 1, embrace discipline. Aristotle said this 2,000 years ago. Through discipline comes freedom. Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. The man who is not disciplined is going to be a slave to his internal world, to his passions and his emotions and his subconscious, and also a slave to his external world, to his situations, to his relationships, to his environment. He will be reactive rather than proactive. You cannot be a healthy and balanced person or leader without discipline. Number 2, live by a code. Living by a code implies discipline, but it also implies submitting yourself to something that is outside of you. Your code can't be whatever makes you happy right in this moment. You need to have a code of conduct that you are striving to live consistently with. And for me, that's the teachings of Jesus and the doctrines of the church. It's the truth and justice and compassion and righteousness. It's the fruit of the Spirit. It's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Number 3, face your challenges courageously. Listen, life ain't easy, but it's a whole lot harder when you run from or avoid the things that you need to address and overcome. Whatever is in your life that needs to be addressed and confronted, be it your taxes or your leaking roof or an issue with your marriage or your kids' behavior, running from the issue isn't the answer. Confront your issues head on with courage, because the prize is on the other side of the struggle, and the alternative is to turn yourself into a victim of your own apathy. This brings us to the 3rd archetype, the magician. Now, this one might seem a little bit strange, but it's a very important piece of the puzzle. The magician archetype represents wisdom and transformation. The magician navigates between being and becoming, between what is and what might be. He sees the world as it is now, and he also sees the world as it might be, and he helps bring about that positive future. The magician helps people and helps societies heal and transform. This time we're going to change things up because both Biden and Trump are actually aligned more with the active shadow of the magician, which is the manipulator. This, unfortunately, is just about every politician. The manipulator uses knowledge to deceive and to manipulate. He hoards information for personal gain. He is ethically unbounded.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
Both Trump and Biden are widely considered to be corrupt and to use their access and intricate knowledge of systems for their own personal gain.
Public documents show foundation funds also went to help settle lawsuits against Mr. Trump.
Specifically, AmeriCorps wired a $200,000 loan into the account of James and Sarah Biden. On the same day, James Biden wrote a $200,000 check from the same account addressed to his brother, Joe Biden.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Side note here, Trump may be more effective at this. Trump is like Godzilla. He just turns everything that is fired at him into his own fuel and to a win for himself. It is like real magic. The passive shadow side of the magician is the innocent. He is overwhelmed by the mysteries of life. He is disengaged and uninterested in applying any knowledge. He lacks the practical wisdom and insight necessary to create change or transformation.
I look at you, I don't see an intelligent, confident man. I see a cocky, scared, shitless kid. Personally, I don't give a shit about all that unless you want to talk about you, who you are. Then I'm fascinated. I'm in. But you don't want to do that, do you, sport?
If you're alive in the West in 2024, this may describe you or many of the men in your life. Checked out, disengaged, lacking practical wisdom necessary to bring about a better reality for yourself or for your family or for your community. If you want to be a good magician in your own life, here are 3 principles for you. Number 1, cultivate knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is information and wisdom is the proper application of that wisdom, right? This means you need to pay attention to what is going on in the world around you, in your own life, in your own home, in your relationships, at your work, in your society. It means you need to be engaged. Remember, the magician sees the world as it is and as it might be, and then helps create that new positive reality. And in order to do this, you need to be engaged and online. Read history, study philosophy, study cosmology and theology. Learn what great minds have said about the most important questions. The more domains that you're familiar with, the more tools you'll have at your disposal to tap into complex solutions to the issues that are facing your world. Number 2, use that knowledge and wisdom for positive change. This means being creative and resourceful in solving problems. Learn to see beyond what's right in front of you. Step back and analyze things deeply. Look for connections and find creative solutions. Do this with your own life. Do this with your spouse. Do this with your kids. Do this at work. When the road seems to come to a dead end, the magician is the one who sees a new way that nobody else sees. Number 3, help others transform. The good magician uses his wisdom and creativity not just for himself, but for those around as well. If you're a manager, help your employees become more efficient, more productive, more cooperative. If you're a parent, pay attention to who your kids are becoming in their best moments and help guide them there. If you're in a relationship, help your partner grow into the best versions of themselves that they possibly can. This leads us to the 4th and final archetype, the lover. The lover is the least obviously applicable to our presidential analysis, but this is still a crucial aspect of good leadership. I don't want to dig through the salacious details of the personal lives of Trump and Biden, so we're going to skip that part of the analysis for here, and we're going to focus on how you can embody this archetype well in your own life. The lover archetype represents passion and empathy and appreciation for beauty. The lover sees the things in his life and celebrates them. He understands how things are connected. He drinks deeply of goodness and beauty in his life, and he helps others do the same. This is Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society.
We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race, and the human race is filled with passion.
The lover is open to the beauty of the world, and he's full of gratitude. He sees what is good and true and beautiful, and he allows himself to be filled with them, and then he overflows them to the people around them. He reminds us what all of this is for. The active shadow is the addicted lover, and as the name suggests, the addicted lover is an addict. Rather than enjoying the things in life, he compulsively consumes them. He is overly dependent on relationships or substances for his fulfillment. He's emotionally unstable and needy. He pursues his pleasure to the detriment of himself and others. It's the alcoholic dad. It's the possessive girlfriend who allows her own insecurity to destroy the trust in her relationship. It's the guy who golfs or hunts every weekend or goes out drinking with his friends every night rather than spending time with his family. The passive shadow is the impotent lover. The impotent lover experiences life from a place of lack or numbness. He is disconnected from his passions and his desires. He is apathetic and he lacks motivation. He also lacks emotional depth. He's not engaged with life. Rather than pursuing experiences or relationships that could bring joy and fulfillment and new experiences, he retreats into himself. He probably has no friends or hobbies or passion. This is the incels who live to troll online. It is the old married couple who have allowed the spark to go out of their marriage and they basically exist as roommates. It's the people who refuse to try new experiences and instead live a life of safety and routine. It is a sad and lonely existence. If you want to be a good lover in your own life, here are 3 principles for you. Number 1, be present. This is an enormous challenge in our modern world. It is so easy to get distracted by a screen or by a schedule or by a to-do list. It is easy to fixate either on the future or to live in the past. Staying grounded in the present moment is a practice and it needs to be practiced. Number 2, choose gratitude. Gratitude is also a practice. There will always be things to be frustrated by. There will always be things to be negative about. Choosing joy and gratitude is an act of defiance. It is an act of rebellion against the forces of doom and gloom that run our world. And number 3, lean in. Contrary to what the movies of our youth told us, it isn't cool to be disinterested. It isn't cool to be disengaged. It isn't cool to be cynical. Think about the people that you admire. Think about anybody that has inspired you. Unless you are a warped person, those people are probably engaged in their own lives and in the lives of the people around them. They are leaning in. They're drinking deeply of life. They are enjoying the ride. So try new experiences, switch up your routine, connect with the people around you in a deeper way. Connect with the people around you, period. Go get to know your neighbors, bring them dinner. Look for the goodness in others instead of always looking for ways to be offended or victimized. Life is full of beauty and goodness if only we're willing to accept it. Now, I said at the beginning that we were going to end with a clip that demonstrates the mature form of these archetypes in action, and we're going to do that now. The clip that we're going to watch is a video from RFK Jr. called How I See the State of Our Union. In the middle of this election cycle where each side is acting like a cheerleader trying to agitate the other side against the other, this video came out and it felt like a moment of moral clarity and it felt like a moment of true leadership. It felt like that moment at the end of Lord of the Flies where right at the climactic moment of chaos and bloodshed on the beach, the naval officers arrive and we zoom back and we see the scene from the eyes or the perspective of the adults. And then all of the fear and anger and shame and the hatred of other, they're all exposed for what they are, a moral dissent. Listen, we are capable of terrible things, but we're also capable of great things. We need a positive vision. We need the good king to remind us of that vision, to call us back to it, to reassert an order that is benevolent and works for the good of all of us. We need the good warrior to walk forward with discipline, living by a code that transcends the differences that fragment us and instead unites us under a banner, to stand with courage and confront the forces that divide us or exploit us in our government and in our media and in our institutions. We need the good magician to see where we are now and to see where we can be and to help guide us there, to help us become the people in the nation that we can be. And we need the good lover to see us as we are and love us, not just some of us who think the same way as we do, all of us. If there's any hope for us as a nation, we need to start being and demanding the kind of leaders who embody these archetypes. With that, I'm going to play this video and I want you to listen to how Kennedy hits each one of these themes. I've clipped it up a bit because I don't want to play the entire 9-minute video, but if you want to watch the whole thing, it is well worth your watch. Regardless of your politics, regardless of how you feel about Kennedy or his policies or whatever crazy stuff you've heard about him online, the point is, this is the type of message we need right now.
I grew up in an America that seemed to have achieved its promise as an exemplary nation. Modern democracy had spread from one nation, ours, in 1776 to 6 by 1865 and to 190 by the 1960s. We had become the city on the hill. We were a moral authority around the globe. Our government, institutions, our Congress, the court, the regulatory agencies, and even the American press were renowned for their integrity, and they were revered worldwide. Other nations wanted our American leadership. They knew the difference between leadership and bullying, which is something our current leaders seem to have forgotten. We were the template of liberty, proof that for a country to thrive, its people must be free. Free to speak, free to worship, free to build great companies, free to start small businesses. We were the freest country in the world, and by no coincidence, also the most prosperous. We've lost touch with that vision for our country. And I want to tell you right now that we can still restore that America, the America that almost was, and yet may be. But we have to start by being honest with ourselves. It's time for us to say enough is enough. We were once a free and thriving nation, the healthiest and strongest in the world. What we once were, we can be again. How do I know that? It's because everywhere I go in this country, I see a profound determination among Americans to heal. We might have become the sickest country on earth, but we also have the most ingenious healers, both inside and outside conventional medicine. We may have sky-high levels of depression and addiction, but we also have innovators who have opened up new frontiers in recovery. We have some of the world's most depleted agricultural soils, but also some of the world's most innovative and energetic regenerative farmers. We have serious economic problems, but we also have the brightest and most ambitious entrepreneurs. We face hunger and homelessness, and yet we meet it with the highest philanthropic rates in the world and bottomless kindness and compassion. We may be on the mat today, but we can be on our feet and happy and healthy and strong again with good leadership tomorrow. Our people and our system were built for resilience. And here's the most important thing I want to tell you about the state of our union. Our nation seems more divided than ever, but Americans everywhere want to heal that divide. Our nation has become artificially divided by political forces that can survive only when we, the people, are at war with each other. People are tired of being manipulated by fear. We learned that lesson during COVID. We recognize that the same techniques of manipulating fear are being used by elites today to corral us into voting for one political candidate or the other. Americans are tired of these dire warnings that to preserve democracy itself, you better vote for our guy. I can tell you that in every state of this union, people are rejecting fear-mongering. 80% of Americans say they don't want to be forced to choose in this election between the lesser of two evils. They're tired of voting against something or someone. I see it in the crowds of mixed Republicans and Democrats and independents who attend my rallies, that a growing number of Americans are rejecting divisiveness. They're ready to unite, to rebuild this country, and to fulfill the promise of the America of my youth. They're ready to vote for something and for someone they like, for someone who represents hope and healing, or someone with an inspiring vision for America's future, for a future that they can believe in. So that's the State of the Union that I want to bring you today. It's a nation that hungers to heal. It's a nation ready to face reality, to rebuild, to end the forever foreign wars, to clean out the corrupt Washington establishment, and to turn again toward peace, freedom, good health, and prosperity. When we unite in that vision, we're going to be unstoppable. Thank you, and God bless you.
That's the message we need from our leaders right now. We're all part of a bigger story, and each of us gets to write one of the plot lines with our own lives. The future of your family and your community and this country is decided by how each of us steward our one plot line, how each of us conduct our lives. We can all aim up together, or we can all aim at each other and descend into the abyss together. So we'll end with this. It starts with you. Your story matters. Your leadership matters. The vision of the future that you're aiming at impacts more than just your own little story. So here's to those of you who are aiming up with your lives. Here's to those of you who are stewarding your story well.